Hello, I'm Riley, and this is the Diegetic Advancement Podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Diegetic Advancement Podcast. I'm Riley, and today I will be talking about my Shadowdark game and some hobbying. But first, I have a call from the excellent Pink Phantom. Take it away.
Hey Riley, the Pink Phantom here. Really enjoyed your last episode where you talked kind of how you're approaching doing mapping of sort of a dungeon area in your solo campaign. It was very interesting to hear kind of your philosophy behind that and what you considered and how you finally ended up doing it, and then that example of play, which is something that I think is sometimes lacking in a lot of when you start getting into a lot of these theoretical discussions, or even sometimes in even some rule sets where you don't have an example of play to show how it should be played or how you play it to give people an idea of what you're thinking. So that was just really enjoyable, and I wanted to call in and say thank you for that, and look forward to more.
Thank you very much for your kind words. It was remiss of me to not mention the Phantom Thoughts podcast last episode, but I'll do it now. The solo ADnD play that the Pink Phantom does there is massively inspirational for me to start my own series of solo RPG podcasts. Very inspired by the way that you go about kind of just playing the game and recounting what happens in your play sessions in a very casual manner, but still interesting and entertaining all the same. Please go check that out. We're currently following the journeys of some humanoid factions around the world that he's created. It's really interesting, entertaining, kind of, and a great example of how perhaps you can use solo play to create a world rather than just making it up all yourself. You can actually play out your world, and that's potentially really interesting and exciting thing to do. Thank you very much again for the call. Okay, on to an update on my Shadowdark game. Firstly, I'll say it's been going really well. We haven't missed any sessions. I did have to reschedule one, and they've been a really good time. As much as I was enjoying the DCC game and playing in person, this swap has been really good. I think a lot of that has to do with just moving to online, getting a few players, and just doing some basic dungeon crawling. But back when I started Shadowdark, I talked about some potential issues that I had with the rules, and I say potential because they were theoretical. I hadn't played or run at that point. Well, we've hit our first rules change, and so I'm going to talk about that. The rule that I'm going to be changing is always on initiative. This has just not worked for my table. We're currently doing a dungeon crawl. It's a very typical BX dungeon, lots of corridors, small rooms, things like that. And what I've found is with the limit of movement per turn, one person ends up leading the way, interacts with things, and everyone else just moves up the conga line behind them. It doesn't really get opportunities to engage, especially the further back you are in that conga line or in the initiative. I was getting fairly loose with how far you could move and what you could do on your turn to kind of alleviate some of this. That still didn't fix it. Then I just implemented a leapfrog rule where you could just start your turn from the front of the line. That was a fairly cheap fix, felt kind of gamey. Additionally, whilst we have had good team interaction, I felt that that being in the initiative all the time has kind of gotten in the way of that still, and kind of leads to the mindset that you're an individual acting and everyone else can't do anything, right? There are some positives, of course. I think it deterred combat, allowed players the opportunity to react to monsters by running, hiding, or being social without immediately going to that combat initiative role. And it does take the role of spotlight management away, either from the GM or from the group, where I think it should belong. But at the end of the last session, we discussed what I've just mentioned and came to the conclusion that whilst the fixes were going okay and there were definite positives to the system, that we'd be moving to a normal style of play, at least for the exploration. I'm going to leave everything else as it is, but I might need to play with the real-time torches if play ends up speeding up as a result. Again, we're only doing 2.5 hour sessions, so an hour torch is fairly long. I might bump that back to 30 minutes at some point. I think I will keep combat as individual initiative for now, though I'm tempted to go to phased. Anyway, the party's been doing really well. We've found some secret rooms just by looking at the map. They've been problem solving with their actions, kind of interacting with the fiction and knowing when to fight and when not to. Loaded up with treasure, So hopefully we're heading back to town soon for a big level up. As we found out last session, it can be deadly having only 1 hit dice. And we might find out that in next session as well. We ended with the party split. 2 characters go into a hallway. A gust of wind puts out their torch, slams the door shut, and they hear the sound of wet footsteps heading towards them, and that's where we ended. So we'll see if they all make it out alive. Okay, I've also got some hobbying to talk about. I talked about watching some games of Bolt Action a little while ago, but last week I went to a friend's place and played a game. I lost, but it was a close match and went down to the wire. I really enjoyed the dice bag mechanic, and unlike, I guess, in 40k, where it's you go, I go, and you can often really tell who's going to win or lose quite early on. It did feel like we were both in the game the whole way through. It was fairly smooth considering it was my first game. Very simple, guess, mechanics for shooting. There's not a lot of special rules or different weapons. They kind of lump all the rifles together and types of weapon. Which I think is good because it's it did take us a while to play, but a quick game is a good game in my opinion, at least. At the same time, some models I purchased have arrived, and I spent some time this week putting them all together. I'm still waiting on a couple more models to arrive and some paints and things for basing, but it's been really enjoyable to get back into the hobby, just sitting down and carving up some minis and gluing them together. Looking forward to getting stuck in on the painting and stuff, and I'll post some photos of everything once it's finished. I've definitely got the wargaming bug again. I'll probably talk about any future games that I do play of Bolt Action or anything else, but probably Bolt Action in the near future. And it's also made me want to return to some campaigning, so maybe keep your ears open for something similar to the chainmail game I ran a while ago. Obviously, I'm thinking about if I can run something in Bolt Action to either make use of the models that I'm building, but maybe to add some flavor to any of the games that I play in the future. I'm also thinking about doing something, again, city-based, but a little bit more abstract Braunstien kind of style. Perhaps each player is playing as a thieves guild or something similar in a city and kind of vying for control. And rather than strict movement and things and defined actions, I kind of perhaps want to open that up. They're the things that I'm toying with at the moment. But yeah, as I said, keep your ears open. If I do something, I'll be asking for players. That's that. Let's close out the episode with some content recommendations. I will again reiterate, go check out the Pink Phantom and Phantom Thoughts for some ADnD solo play goodness. I'll link the latest episode in the show notes. The Joy of Wargaming channel recently had a video with some great advice on how to use some Braunstien techniques to get your players running factions in your world, in your campaign. Really interesting. One of those things that seems obvious once someone said it, but before anyone said it, maybe not so, or at least I wouldn't have thought of it myself. And lastly, I wanted to give a shout out generally to RPG A Day and to Mirke the Meek, who has put himself to the challenge of committing to that daily challenge, potentially with his daughters and potentially putting it together into a campaign setting at the end. I'll include links to Mirke's one of his many podcasts on that already, and the links to the RPG A Day if you are interested in participating yourself. Anyway, that is it for today's episode, this week's episode. Thank you very much for listening. As always, the links for things are in the show notes. If you would like to call in, get in contact with me on anything I've talked about today or anything at all, the links are also in the show notes, and I'll talk about them in the outro. Thanks again, and bye for now. I'd love to hear your feedback. You can reach me via Spotify, SpeakPipe, Discord, or email. Those details, along with everything I've talked about today, are in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.